Hi, welcome back to Random Reading Pathways. Happy New Year 2025. With this video, I kind of just want to look ahead to the coming year and talk quickly about one or two new elements to my reading that will be present this year. And they're sort of related in a sense, but basically, I want to keep staying the course that I've been doing, which consists of, as I've said before, reading one standalone novel, be it fiction or nonfiction, alongside reading one typically longer, thicker book from a fantasy or sci-fi series alongside each other. And I think with this year, it looks like maybe there'll be a third element that's kind of entering the mix, and that is largely as a result of getting my first e-reader. So I do have a Kindle now. I didn't get this necessarily right at the holidays or anything like that. I had it a little bit before, but I'm still getting used to it and still kind of seeing and feeling about how I want to incorporate it into my reading. So I got it toward the end of November, and I've read three books on the Kindle so far. I'll just show those quick. So here's White Fang, Jack London. I got this from Project Gutenberg, which I'll talk about a little bit more. And the second book I read on the Kindle was, so far it's been kind of all older classic short reads. Here is A Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens. I read that a little bit before the Christmas season, but that was the first one I tried out on here. And for another short, sort of older book that I got through on here, if I can just pull it up quickly, this is In a Yellow Wood, Gore Vidal. And I got through this in a couple of days, as this was a pretty short book. So that's what I've read on the Kindle so far since I've gotten it. I've enjoyed reading on it. Currently, I am reading, I'll show right here. This one I got on Libby. This is my first borrowing of an ebook from my library. And this is F. Scott Fitzgerald. It's The Curious Case of Benjamin Button and Other Jazz Age Stories. So this is F. Scott Fitzgerald's short stories, including The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, which is a movie that I very much enjoy. So basically what I want to do is just talk about sort of how I plan to integrate the Kindle into my reading this year. As I said, generally I read a standalone book alongside reading a longer, fantasy or sci-fi book that's in a series. My initial instincts with this is I don't want the Kindle necessarily. I'm still a lover of physical books, especially big, tough, long books. I like sitting and living with one of those for quite a long time. So I don't want the Kindle, at least right away, to be a replacement for physical books in any sort of way. I really wanted to just increase my reading by being like a supplement. So far it's helped in that very much, in that I've been able to read a couple short books on there, kind of get through them and move on and not really be sitting with one for a really extended period of time. And I'd like to continue that. So, and the other thing is I don't want to spend money on books on the Kindle. I don't plan to spend anything really on, acquiring ebooks. If anything, my money spent on books is typically just book sales, cheap book sales and used bookstores, with the occasional new book here and there, but really infrequently for that. So I do plan to continue utilizing as many free resources as I can come up with to read on the Kindle. The leading one I've used so far, as I mentioned, is Project Gutenberg, which I haven't found a way to sort of go to Project Gutenberg outside of the Kindle and then get a file from Project Gutenberg and transfer it onto the Kindle. So far what I've done is just use the pretty simplistic limited web browser that's on the Kindle itself to go to the Project Gutenberg site, get the book directly. It's worked okay doing that way so far, so as long as that's working, I'll stick with it. But Project Gutenberg is just a massive online database of all older, classic, out-of-copyright works that are just free and available for download to read on an e-reader. So I will continue to do that. I've been looking into and come across some other resources somewhat similar. I think standard ebooks is one of them that I was looking at. I happened to check it out just yesterday on New Year's Day, and it was timely because there was a big banner right up front on the site that said Happy Public Domain Day, meaning, with the beginning of each new year, there's a handful, more than a handful, probably hundreds and thousands of classic old titles that go out of copyright and become available freely. So I will be looking into resources like that. And of course, the other big one being borrowing ebooks from my library with Libby. I plan to do that as well. And the F. Scott Fitzgerald book that I started on now is the first iteration of that. So, yeah. And basically, the thing is, I think this is contrary to some things I've seen a lot of people say regarding the Kindle, which is they like the aspect of it that gets them away from having to lug around big, heavy physical books. I can see the allure of that, certainly, and the usefulness of it, but as I said, one of the books I'm always reading at all times is a fantasy or sci-fi book that's part of a series. In my experience, those tend to be a little bit bigger, chunkier, thicker books, and while it can be a little bit of a burden sometimes to have to carry those around and lug them with you, at the same time, for me at least, I enjoy that. I enjoy the aesthetics of having to plow through a big, heavy, long fantasy or sci-fi book. It just helps me feel more engaged with the book, more like I'm actually diving into that world that's being described. Maybe that'll change at some point, but for me, it would be kind of hard for me to actually picture reading, like, say, a 900-page George R.R. Martin fantasy book, as I'm still reading through at the moment physically, on the Kindle. I don't know, it would just feel a little bit like detached from the sheer raw physicality of such a book. And so I think for now, with my bigger fantasy sci-fi series books, I'm going to stick to the physical ones. And my standalone books, that I'm reading from my library, from my shelves, to get through my physical TBR, I'm going to stick to those. But for this, I'm hoping to make it a supplement with what I've been doing so far, for the most part, which is largely quicker, older classic reads, short story reads, maybe supplement it with some other, maybe philosophy type reads or poetry even. Things that are a little bit more, ironically, lightweight and quicker to get through. You would think it would be the other way around. I would want to stop holding physical 400, 500 page books and just condense them into this. For now, that's sort of not my instinct with it. We'll see where I go with the Kindle as I continue to get used to using it. But anyway, that's the progress with that so far. And then the other update, the other sort of introduction to my reading this year is something I came up with toward the end of 2024. And I'll just take this quick moment here to say that, speaking of the end of 2024, I definitely had a very enjoyable, great reading year for me, for my standards. And I summed that all up in my 2024 Book Awards video, which is now available, and I'll try to drop a little link to it here in the video. It was a lot of fun for me to think through a bunch of categories and talk about those. So if you want to see like a little snapshot of my 2024 favorites, that video is available. But something I kind of had a little thought to do at the end of the year was, so I don't want to ever lose the thing that really brings me a lot of joy with reading and finding books to read, which is the randomness, which kicked off this channel for me. So I work in an area / live in an area that, I've alluded to this before, has access to a great number of libraries, really good libraries, and also university libraries. This is something that I hadn't thought of before, but basically when I was in college, I remember going to my own college library just to look for fiction books to read for pleasure, and I remember there being a really good selection. So that got me thinking a little bit, that got the gears turning a little bit in the direction of, well, I have libraries like that nearby, and my work, gives me a little bit of time from time to time to visit places like that and see what I can find. But then, of course, the roadblock in my head was always, well, I'm not members at these libraries, so, what fun is it to go browse books at a library you can't borrow from? And then I sort of had a little light bulb moment where I thought, well, actually, that can be very useful. I can go to those libraries and read books there in little chunks, piecemeal, and then put them back, and then return to that library when I have another little block of time and continue with it. And I've heard a couple people on BookTube once or twice mention this concept. It might be a dying art, maybe, that people used to do more, but I think I might introduce it this year, which is going to a library, picking a book randomly off the shelf, strictly random, meaning random number generator, devoting whatever time I have on my hands that day to reading it, and then marking my place in it, putting it back, and returning to that library the next time I have another block of time, and continuing with it, and doing that over and over until I finish the book. So it's sort of not borrowing a book, but it's sort of returning to a library to read a book in little increments. So I did start that at the end of the year. I gave it a trial run to see how I'd feel about it, and in an interesting way, I found that this new element to my reading may actually be a way for this random number generator at libraries that I don't belong to. That mechanism might be able to intersect with my e-reading, actually, because with this book, In a Yellow Wood by Gore Vidal, I went to a library that I'm not a member of, and I ran the random number generator through the fiction area and came up with this. And I got a good chunk of it done when I had some free time that day at that library, maybe a third of it, if I remember, because it's a pretty quick read. Marked my place in it. I left, obviously. Had to leave eventually. And then I thought, well, let me look on the Kindle, and lo and behold, the book was available in Project Gutenberg to continue with. So I think, in a sense, this might give me a chance to do this fun experiment of go to these libraries, including university libraries, read little piecemeal increments of books, and then check the Kindle and see if I can continue them that way. So I can kind of bounce back and forth between maybe starting them at a library and then continuing them on a Kindle and then finishing them at the library and vice versa, however I get them done. I think it's an interesting way to maybe supplement my reading and add to it. Of course, while still reading my primary books that I'm working through. But I think it's one of those things where sometimes I'll have some free time, or I'll have a lunch break or something like that, work-related, or I'll be in an area where I have a little bit of time, and I may not have my book on me, or I may just want to strike a little bit of randomness into the day and see what happens. So far it's gone well, the first time I've tried that. And I think with 2025, I will see about continuing to do that. So it'll be the standalone book on my TBR, that I'm getting through. It'll be the fantasy sci-fi book as part of a series. And then it will be introducing the Kindle, which will be just Kindle finds that are free and available that I'm interested in, but also kind of blending those two ideas of visiting really impressive collections in libraries that I don't belong to, and starting to read physical books there during my brief visits, and then maybe concluding them and or continuing them on this if they're available. So that's it. That's basically the update. I wanted to just talk about those two little, new elements to my reading this year, and hopefully they will continue to drive additional reading forward, because like I said, I want the Kindle and this other library idea I have, I want those to be drivers of more reading, not necessarily replacing or substituting this for books I'm already reading. Because I definitely want my reading number to go up further in 2025. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening to this little update, and Happy New Year again, and I hope to be back with some more updates soon. Thanks.